Hey, I'm AJ,
I'm sorry.
and we are the 2020 to 2021 video game design team for Hart County High School. This year, we made an adventure game. It starts off in the real world and then slowly transitions into the virtual world where you fight an artificial intelligent boss that controls the way of the land and runs things inside the virtual world.
Yep.
So let's get started. So after loading up here, going through the normal sequence, we have our logo on there and then the title of the game, which is Cypher. So starting off here, we are in the basement. This is the home of the real world person, and we're going over here and we're going to pick up this computer part, and right there we explain what the computer part is to try to teach people how to build a computer. All the models and all the objects you see inside here were made by me inside Blender. It's a professional software. Everything you will see in the rest of this video will be made by either me or Sawyer. Nothing else was made by anybody else.
Yeah, with this basement scene, we really wanted to integrate what we did in our computer science class that we had this year in our school, and we just wanted to teach others about it.
So speeding things up here, we start building the computer, taking a look outside, taking a look at this. It kind of gives that hackery kind of vibe of the whole basement. You have a lot of computer parts laying around, and now we're going to put on the virtual reality headset. And starting things off in this virtual hub, you'll notice things are a little bit different. That's because this is actually recorded in virtual reality. So we have a non-virtual reality version and a virtual reality version using the Oculus platform. So here is in VR, and you'll be able to see the hands and just kind of the head as it moves around. So moving through the hub here, first off we see some large buildings right here, and we can see the entrances to some of the mini games that we have created, as well as other shops and stores. So fast forwarding through here, we are now landed going inside the area for Bot Apocalypse, one of the first mini games that we decided to put in the game.
And this mini game, you shoot your way through bunches of waves of robots. Just try to survive.
So we started out with making the gun. That was the first part. I made the gun, put textures on it, and then we added a mini display that goes on the back. After that, we began to create scenery. So we took models from previous games, especially last year's game, the archery game. We took models out of that to create levels.
So these drones you see flying around, what they use is a wandering empty that they randomly follow around, and they'll follow that around until they see the player, and then they'll start following the player, which then they start shooting.
So the whole goal of this scene was to try to, the more and more robots that you destroy, the more score or credits you collect, and then you need those credits to have access to other parts of the game. Modeling the robots was quite difficult because we wanted to have several different levels of robots, and you'll see that kind of later in the game as you play. There's different ones besides the camouflage ones that you're seeing now. So it's kind of difficult getting them all to be relatively the same, where you could tell that they're the same robot but have different features to tell them, okay, this is going to be a harder robot than the last one.
Yeah, we want to make it progressively harder so it's harder to beat for the player.
And while it's not in this video, there are 3 more levels behind this one. And each level the robots spawn a little bit faster, they get a little bit tougher, and you can pick up hearts, have a random drop when killing the robots. The last level is kind of my favorite because they just come and you can't stop them. They spawn so much and it gets really hard, and I haven't beaten it, and I don't think I will. We also have the incorporation of the wrist device to be able to see all the players' vitals, the health, the score, as well as instructions on how to actually log out of the scene and get back to the real world. So right now we're walking through the hub again as we came out of the last mini game. We're going into the next one, which is Claustrophobia. So starting off here, we can first see the dungeon style hall. We have models like the torch and the cobweb, and then you will also notice that the gun from the earlier scenes is brought back in, as well as the wrist device on the left arm. So these walls, you'll notice that they're kind of giving off a 3D look, actually, interacting with shadows and light or real time. That's because the walls have a normal or bump map on them that causes the geometry, and it's actually not physical geometry, but the 2D planes to emit a kind of 3D feeling and look to them. So one of my favorite things about this scene is actually when you're in VR, you get to peek around a corner and see what's coming up next.
For these spikes you see here, we use animations for them to go up and down from the ground.
The spikes have a collider on them that when they interact with the player's collider, then we take away a HART, which can be read on the wrist device. So walking down through here, after we get past the spikes, we are then met with another room that we've never seen before, and the swinging axes come down, just another challenge for the player. And it's actually quite difficult to walk across this thin little archway in virtual reality and not fall off. So fast forwarding a little bit through here, we are coming through some dark corners. You can notice that the space is starting to get a little bit more cramped.
Hence the name, claustrophobia.
Yeah, there you go. Coming through these hallways, we will then notice that here in a second, the first real enemy of this scene will come to life and come at you. And I'll let Sawyer talk about this one. This was one of his bigger projects.
Yeah, these spiders use different blend tree animations. As they walk, they start in their walking animation, and they have to transfer over to their idle animation. And then when they get to the player, they have to go to an attack animation. They also have a loot drop system, as you can see in right there as they did. They'll have a random chance of dropping either a heart or credits, which will help you through the whole game.
So we're met here with another enemy, the fire, and you can see the player as they move through here, and there you can see a heart in the distance there that you can actually pick up and heal yourself. The gun works on when the trigger is pressed, it emits an object that has velocity and actual forces placed on it. That object will then travel, and if it is to hit, say, a wall, then it will just explode on the wall. If it hits the spider, it is then, or the collider from the bullet and the collider from the spider meet, then the spider will take damage or die, and that's how the gun works. So moving out of there, the final level, and you have to have enough credits built up from the other mini games to purchase your way into this next one, but the next one we call Super Fantasia. And as you're walking down here, you can hear and see fireworks and happy music, kind of carnival music, get that generally happy vibe, and you'll see here in a second when we enter into this level, you're not going to get that same kind of feeling. So here we are, dark hospital, flashlight. This level was super fun to make, for me at least, because each kind of section, hallway, or quadrant you'll see is based on a 5 meter by 5 meter grid. That way we can make several different versions. I think there's about 10 different models, and they're all just lined up perfectly because they are on that 5 by 5 grid. Textures were also tileable as well because of each model used the same texture to start off with. So after walking down here, you see some things start to become unusual and not something that we thought we were going to see when we were first walking into the scene. The player is eventually, however, whichever path he takes, they all lead to the same direction. And as the player moves towards this longer and darker hallway, he starts to see stuff, body bags, a lot of just interesting stuff it's making the player not feel like something's right. So as we walk down this hallway, we're going to be greeted by what is the Hive's attack, the Hive AI's attack. So Their main attack is a kind of kaleidoscope visual effect that causes the player to fall into a comatose state, and that is how they trap players inside the virtual world where they cannot return to the real world.
Yeah, we made this using different shaders.
Exception. Error. Memory dump.
So
in
as
progress.
we're starting here, we're
Please
gonna let y'all watch
stand
this
by.
and we will get back with y'all. Hey friend, I have some bad news for you. Right now in the real world, outside of VR, you're slowly going comatose. Yeah, slip into a coma. It's the Hive AI, man. I think it's evil. I'm gonna try to pull you out. Hold on. And don't stare at it too long.
Log out. Access denied.
I think I almost got it. There. Go through that door. So what you just saw, while the player is being sucked into that kind of kaleidoscope visual effect, another player introduces themselves as their kind of savior. The savior is trying to pull them out of that simulation before they are falling into that comatose state. After that, the player is landed here in the final level. This is where the player will actually fight that AI boss and have a chance to go against them instead of trying to be sucked into that comatose state.
And to beat this AI, you have to use multiple different logic gates using binary numbers, dragging from one to the other.
Yes, this is the first year that our school was allowed to get a computer science class, so we learned about logic gates and we wanted to incorporate that into our game. So starting off here, we just kind of this virtual environment, we get a look around. We see that there's a face that's moving around. We don't really know much about that yet, except for that is the Hive AI. Now we're picking up some of these binary numbers and we're going to take them over to the logic gates to plug them in. Now there is a diagram in the beginning scene of the basement that actually shows how these logic gates work and which ones are which and which takes specific inputs. So as we're walking over here, we're gonna hear something. We turn around, and this Hive face is actually talking to us.
Be careful.
So this was a really interesting technique on how we did this. We had a face model, and then we began to drew small dots on a real person's face with just makeup or something, and then we proceeded to film the face, take it to our Blender modeling software, track each little dot as it moves around, and then we can project that onto a digital face and actually move that face around and get it to talk and line up with the audio. So I was the one that worked on the face for the most part, and the real hardest part was trying to get it so when it had to come from an idle animation of it just moving around, and then it had to move into the whichever animation it decided to play. So we have over 7 different taunts that the Hive AI says to the player. It picks randomly 1 through 7, and then whichever number it picks has a corresponding animation and audio clip that it has to play with it.
But I will.
But the hardest part of this probably has to be the code for the logic gates. It all runs from a single code coming from those little inputs that stick out from the gate. And as soon as those spheres, either ones or zeros, collide with those inputs, they check if it's a 1 or a 0, and then they'll output the correct sphere.
It's certainly hard because there's, even if you did not know what you're doing, there's so many different inputs that the player could give, and it has to be able to decide, okay, that's wrong. It has to be able to know on its own which is the right input, and you can actually move these logic gates around however you want, as long as you can get the final correct input on the other side. So there's multiple different ways to solve this puzzle. So moving on through here, after the player hooks up the correct inputs, the Hive AI is then defeated, and we are met with our end screen. So overall, I had a lot of fun this year. We had an introduction of a lot of new software, a lot of new techniques. I learned a lot. I was just modeling before this, and I've gotten into coding. One of the main things I think that was difficult for us this year was certainly COVID, having different times and during the school year where we had to be, at home and virtual and not being able to sit here and just talk about this. The Zoom calls were a big thing, and some other softwares like Discord helped us out a lot.
Yeah, we use things like GitHub to transfer our files over so we could see what we had.
Yeah, GitHub was a big one. GitHub is a repository server where we have one main game file and a couple of different computers that can each push their own changes to the actual server, and then we can refresh that and make it available for the whole team. Other than that, I think everything was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to come home with a national trophy. I think that would be nice if we could do that. So
Learned a lot this year.
yeah, it was certainly interesting this year. So, thank you for your time.